Good evening, Smack Nation. Thank you all for joining us tonight. I am your host, Michelle, and boy, do I have a show for you. I have invited Kwame Gyamfi to the show to tell his story. Now, it isn't your everyday custody battle story either. In fact, it's less about a custody battle and more about doing what is in the best interest of his son. In his efforts to fight for his son, he uncovered something so mind blowing that you just wouldn't even think is possible. Okay. He even made a movie about this. Okay. He directed a movie called In the Best Interest. And you can find that at inthebestinterest.com. And it's on YouTube and Rumble, just so you know. But before I even go there, let me just tell you a little bit about our guest. Kwame Gyamfi is from Jacksonville, North Carolina. He attended North Carolina State University and received both his master's degree in technology and international development and his undergraduate degree in communications. Mr. Gyamfi is a former fellows intern from the United Nations in New York, where he worked with the United Nations Center for Trade and Development to assist small and medium businesses at the Improtech program in Accra, Ghana. In 2001, Mr. Gyamfi accepted a software engineering position at NASA headquarters, where he developed financial and reporting applications for the aerospace division in Washington, D.C. In 2003, Mr. Gyamfi was one of the software engineers selected to join NASA Integrated Financial Management Project team. Mr. Gyamfi went on to work at various other federal agencies that include the Department of Defense, the State Department, and the Department of Labor, where he currently supports the eGrants financial grant management system, along with other software developers and analysts. Mr. Gyamfi is a husband and a proud father of four and currently resides in the suburbs of Washington, D.C., in Bowie, Maryland. So, without further ado, because we're going to get right into this, welcome to our show, Mr. Kwame Gyamfi.
Well, thank you very much, Michelle. And I am so happy to be a part of your production and a part of your show. I can't tell you how much I appreciate the fact that you continue to push and push and push and finally bring me on to this show to talk about a very sensitive subject and a subject that I honestly believe that should be told. But if it was not for you pushing
Mhm.
the issue, I'd be outside playing ball with my children or something. Don't have it to think about. So again, thank you, and I look forward to this event.
Well, I'm just so blessed to have you on the show. I mean, this, you know, when I saw the movie it was about a year, almost a year ago,
Right.
um, I have to take a step back and say, whoa, whoa, did I see what I just saw? Did I hear what I just heard? And I called you up, and I think we talked for a couple of hours
Yes.
afterwards. I was like, you were like, yeah,
Yes.
you saw and heard the right what you heard, and I'm like, oh my God, okay, so life got busy and everything, and I was like, we're gonna have you on the show. I'm gonna have you on here one day, and here we are, and I'm so excited. So I want to get right into my very, very first question. So like I said, this story started out as a child support case. Okay. Your son's mother filed for child support. Process server came to your door and you were served. Can you tell us about your experience in child support court? And just so for our audience, we're going to be talking about a variety of different courts. So try to stay with us. So the first level of court was child support court. So can you tell us
That's right.
about that experience there?
Yeah, absolutely. First of all, I've never had any experiences with courts. So for me to get a knock on the door and someone serve me in court, that's really a big deal from the world that I come from, being from a military family, because you're raised to follow the rules and do everything you're supposed to do. But yeah, a process server came over, served us with papers, and I immediately contacted a friend of mine whose father had gone through something similar. And he actually set me up with an attorney. We talked, collaborated, consulted. And I thought that I had everything in place that I needed. And I'm going to tell you why. Because there was no need for child support at all. So I didn't really understand where that was even coming from. And I say that because my son's mother and I had already worked out a financial arrangement when the child was like 3 months old. So by the time I got a knock on the door, he's 6 years old. So for 6 years, we shared a joint banking account with my name on it. Her name was on it. So all checks written to child care, supplies, schools, babysitter, all of that had her name on it and my name on it. And every pay period, we would faithfully put money into that joint account. Probably in his 5th year, she began to say, well, I don't know if I like this account arrangement. By that time, I had moved to Bowie and was starting to get a handle on my career and progress a little bit. So interesting enough, when she started that road of saying, hey, I don't want the joint account anymore. I'm not comfortable with the joint account anymore. And I'm like, I don't understand why you're not comfortable with it. Because it is a custodial record that supports all three of us, the child, you, and myself. And we faithfully put money into that account and we write checks from
Sounds
that
like
account.
a good plan, right? I mean,
you would think that. Exactly. Well, let me speed it along. By the time the process server knocks on my door, she had already closed the account, maybe about 6 months prior to the process server. So I continued with a new account, bank account, dedicated specifically to child care. That way I had a separate record, financial record, that supported his child care, even though she had taken herself off the primary account. So you can understand now my confusion about why someone's knocking on my door talking about child support. Because technically, by the time we ended up in child support court, I'm the one that's doing all of the paying. She stepped away from that responsibility. So I don't know if you want to pause and ask a question, but I can continue.
No, keep going, keep going.
Okay. So the attorney that I had, I gotta say this part. It's funny that I can laugh about it now.
Yeah.
Back then, girl, I was like this. I'm in the legal office. I'm showing my lawyer. I'm like, I'm showing him the videos of when he was born and how we was raised. And we got all this lovey-dovey family. I'm married. I have another child. We just bought this house in Bowie. I just don't understand. So my lawyer had heard the boohoo story before we got to child support court. So, interesting enough, when we go to child support court, my lawyer doesn't have any paperwork. Girl, I have a stack of paperwork like this, and it's all organized in a nice binder. This is the insurance. This is the bank statements from when he was 3 months old. I mean, I had all of that.
All of it.
We went into that courtroom. Girl, they talked to me like I was nothing in there.
Ooh.
I mean, it was like the child was labeled special needs. The child had always resided with the mother. There is no existing orders or support for this child.
Oh,
he doesn't want to provide the insurance on the child. And I'm in the courtroom like, who are they talking about? That got to be
Right.
the wrong case. So
Right. Okay.
I pull now my lawyer is right beside me. I pull out this binder and the judge freaked out. I said, what child are y'all talking about? I said, this is the boy's bank statements. This is the boy's insurance statement. We even had a college plan from when he was like months old that had already started. I'm like, why are we even here? I don't even
Right.
understand what's going on here. That judge did not care. Let me tell you what it came down to. Then because we got we only got an hour. So what it came down to was this: a child support court jurisdictionally cannot hear issues related to custody. So it doesn't matter that you have a relationship with the child, you've always been there with the child. The only issue on the table was who had the majority of time spent. They call it overnights.
Okay.
Now, this is where they got me. Let me explain. Isaiah had been a child that split down the middle. I would have him Wednesday, Thursday, Friday, Saturday, then drop him off Saturday evening at his mom's.
Okay.
That Saturday, and because you have 7 days in a period, gave her credit. Yes, gave her credit. So because I picked them up Wednesday, Thursday, Friday, Saturday, and then the alternating week would be Thursday, Friday, Saturday. You know, this magistrate judge pulled out a piece of paper and she marked that thing down, boom, 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 just like that. And she calculated up the days, because we went from a father who was not around, absentee father, from when we first went into the courtroom, to the judge is like, well, wait a minute, what's going on in this courtroom? They mapped out the days, counted the hours. They said, Mr. Gemfeet, I think you have 42 hours according to our calculation, and she has 58 hours or something like that. She had the majority because he got dropped off Saturday, not a stayover Saturday. If he stayed over Saturday, then it would have tripped into my favor. Now, because of that, they tagged me a non-custodial parent. I looked at my lawyer. The hell is a non-custodial parent?
Right.
He was like, oh, Kwame, don't worry about that, Kwame. He says, look, all you have to do now is just pay the child support. We walked out with me having an obligation of $2,000 a month in child support for his mother. So every pay period, it was an equivalent of 1,000 here and 1,000 here. And being from a military background, the courtroom, we're going to do everything that the honor, respect.
Yep.
I went upstairs to the courtroom. I gave them my social security number. I gave them my check stubs. And I looked at my lawyer and said, where do we go from here? I was emotionally devastated. He explained to me, he said, Kwame, this is a child support hearing. What you want is family court. All that stuff that you've been doing, he says, you don't have to do all of that stuff anymore. I said, that's parenting. He said, well, the only thing the court cares about, this court, is the child support. So I said, man, I'm a parent. Isaiah's a part of this family. So after that, we started making preparations to go to family court. But I was not happy with that attorney because I didn't feel as though he was an advocate on my behalf, because I had given him the story, I'd given him the documentation, and he said he didn't bring none of the documentation into courtroom. It wasn't until I raised the issue of what they were saying and I had paperwork to back it up. And that's when the judge backed the man. Well, what's going on in this courtroom? So then what I did in preparation of going into family court, I went on K Street, Washington, D.C., and hired me a real family court law firm. And
Wow.
that made a huge difference.
Okay.
I think
Okay.
I think that this
So
might be the part where we
yeah,
pause and you ask some questions.
yeah, yeah. So we got the ridiculousness that just happened in your child support court. So now we're
Correct.
moving on to family court.
Correct.
And basically, your goal here is to try to, I guess, overturn this absurd ruling that you're a non custodial parent and that you got to pay $2,000 a month, right?
Correct.
And you're
Correct.
like, okay, this can't be. And
Correct.
so now you go there, and what happens?
Well, the lawyer that I had, um, he was, I mean, he knew the chief judge personally of the whole court facility, Judge King, Rufus King, I think that's his name. Um, Cooter, Armin Cooter was my attorney, and he is very well respected family court attorney. As a retainer fee back then,
Mhm.
I'm sure now it's even more expensive, but back then the retainer fee up front was $15,000. That's
Wow.
just to get paperwork started. I
Wow.
forget what the hourly rate was, but I like 200 or I forget how much it is, some ridiculous hourly wage number. But I'm gonna tell you this: it was one of the best investments I could have made because his job was to take my case and really present the whole package of who I was. And I can remember the judge's face when I walked into the courtroom the
Mhm.
very first time with that attorney. And the attorney and the judge, they were kind of talking like they, kind of talking like they know each other. The judge looked at me.
Yeah.
The other party wasn't ready yet. So then the judge was like, let me excuse myself. So she excused herself. And then they came back and everything was all formal. But the attorney that I had, I'm trying to paint a picture of the type of attorney that I hired here. Um, he was very well respected and he knew the family court matter inside and out. So in the
Okay.
movie, I try to bring out the professionalism of that particular law firm because
Yeah.
that law firm really took the issue of custody. And I'll give you an example of what I mean by that. Um, as a father in a relationship where you're not married, because you got to understand, me and my son's mother, we were never married, and that matters. So because you're not married and you're going into family court, there's no existing orders on the court. And I try to bring this out into the movie because the attorneys were talking amongst themselves, making a statement like, well, there's no existing order and he's married. I didn't know
Mm.
what they were talking about. So I'm like, okay, well, they the lawyers, they know what they're
They know
doing. They
best,
put it together.
right? Ugh.
So I just remember them saying there's no existing order. All right. So we go and package this paperwork, all of the financial statements, all of the insurance statements, the pre-planned college fund, the fact that I was married, the fact that the child had a younger sibling, the fact that we were in a household. The lawyer packaged up the family experience for the family court. That's why the movie is called In the Best Interest.
Yeah.
So when we go to court, man, oh man, oh man, it was really interesting. I learned a lot. I felt as though my attorneys did an excellent job, extraordinary job. And at the end of the day, um, when the time for the judge to make a ruling, there was no ruling. Literally, when I say there was no ruling, there was no ruling. The judge sat on this case for almost 2 years. So
Wow.
Within that period, from when we finished presenting our case to that 2-year period, we were going back and forth filing what I would call frivolous motions. And a frivolous motion would be something like, hey, the mother is saying when the child was over at your house, she called the house and she couldn't get access to the child. So you guys need to create a separate line just so that when she calls that line, when he's over here, she has access to the child. The judge threw that stuff out as ridiculous and frivolous. But here's the point that I'm making. It costs money. Every time that lawyer has to go and present a case, file a motion, answer a motion, it's ka-chang, ka-chang, ka-chang. Anytime you email, anytime you call the attorney, quick question, ka-chang, ka-chang, ka-chang. Well, after a while, you know, I'm under this tremendous stress of dealing with the court and the court matters while we're waiting for a final ruling. And by that time, I'm working at NASA and I'm also a CIO at a university, both jobs at the same time. It was too much, way too much. So something had to give. I ended up losing both of my jobs. So, that's in the movie. Believe it or not, between you and me, Michelle, probably one of the best things that could have happened to me, because it took me off of that roller coaster. It gave me an opportunity to breathe. And once I got to that point where I could breathe, I started reading the law books.
We got a lawyer on our hands. I know that feeling though, right? You got to understand this.
Reading.
Oh my goodness! And I wanted to say something right here. Yeah, you can pull out those books. Show us if you got them there. But it is so important.
Go ahead.
I'm just gonna say it's so important to understand, you know, the law, because just like when we go to the doctor and you have to have a surgery, you assume that doctor knows what they're doing. You're not going to be the pro to cut on yourself. And so oftentimes we take the same approach with legal counsel, where we just automatically assume they know it all, and we're going to kind of sit back and let them drive this thing for us, and they're going to be in our best interest to do what's best for us. No, you got to fight for yourself, because if you don't, you may find yourself with a quasi-incompetent attorney and they will have you messed up. So it's important that you know the law just as much as they do. I mean, not that you got to know it to letter to law, but have some common sense. Have you got to know something, because if you put everything in their hands, you might come out shorthanded in the end. And I'm just putting that little plug out there for anybody who's going through legal issues or anything right now. Try to know as much as you can about your case as possible. You're not an attorney, and yes, you are relying on those people that are experts who went to college for this and got the Juris Doctorate and everything, that they know what they're doing. Just be careful is all I'm going to say. I've run across some great attorneys, and I've run across some terrible ones, and so just wanted to put that out there.
Well, like I was saying, it sounds bad, man. I was at NASA and I'm writing applications at a very high level, you know, and within, I guess, 3 to 4 months, both jobs was gone. But like I said,
it was a blessing.
It gave me an opportunity to hit the pause button, and I started reading. I had bought the books when I first started the court, but I never had the time to actually read the book. And this one particular book, and I shared this book in the movie, it's the Domestic Relations Manual for the District of Columbia. It is the actual book that they use in the family court. And that book became my Bible. And I started reading so much, not just domestic relations. I'm reading about the appellate law, constitutional law, and I'm like, oh my God, the judge has been sitting on this case for 2 years. So I found out that there's a legal instrument called a writ of mandamus that you take to the higher court. And the
Okay.
lower court, they only have jurisdiction over a writ of mandamus if a lower officer or a lower court owes you something and haven't given you anything. So when I filed that writ, man, that judge,
And you wrote that writ, and it went where did that writ go?
it went to the Court of Appeals for the
Okay.
District of Columbia, which is
Okay.
the state court, the highest in that particular division that has jurisdiction over the superior court, family court judge.
Okay.
So when
So
I
that's
found
another
that,
court, people. I want to show these stacks of courts that that you have to go to, and you're still not done. But yeah.
well,
Woo.
what I did when I found that writ, man, within 1 week, judge issued an order. Now, again, you got to understand something. The arrangement of custody in terms of our visitation, in terms of child support, payment, everything stayed the same. That's what
So they
she
didn't
wrote.
do anything. 2 years passed.
They didn't do it.
Nothing happened. Okay.
They didn't do
Waste of
anything.
time. I mean, not waste,
Now,
but you learned a lot, but it's like, yeah, burning time to get the same result, basically.
exactly, but you got to remember, I'm reading the book.
Now you're reading the books.
Yes,
Now
and see,
you're almost a dangerous lawyer over there.
well, by the time I got to that point where I'm filing writs, my K Street attorney, I had relieved him of his duties because there was no sense going back and forth filing frivolous motions, costing me a lot of money. Now, during the consultation phase of the child support era, there was an attorney that I collaborated with, and she, after I let loose the K Street attorney, I don't want to use the term because it might sound a little negative, but I downgraded. It was not the big time family court law
Because it's
firm.
expensive.
I went to a solo practitioner.
Yeah.
Now, when I went to the solo practitioner, you got to understand, I know what I need. I know what needs to happen, and I know how I want my briefs written. As a matter of fact, I started writing my own briefs. Then she would put her signature on it as though it was hers.
Okay.
But I was writing my own because by that time, I knew what I wanted. Now, when we got there, and the judge issued the same order, nothing has changed. I said, well, according to the domestic relations, no one said anything to me, but I'm holding all the cards. And what I mean by holding all the cards, remember, there was no existing order. That's what the law firm, the K Street law firm, was talking about. There was no existing order. So because there was
what does that mean?
What that mean is that what matters in the child's best interest becomes an easy standard for my household because I'm married, I have the home, I have the 2.5 American dream white picket fence kind of thing, and a 2-parent home, according to doctrine in the family court, is the best option for a child when you compare him to a single parent home. So all things being equal, which both of us were on equal footing, me and his biological mother, what I found out was all we had to do was get our K Street attorney to petition for the adoption of the child initiated by my wife.
Oh, okay.
That standard overrides everything in the child support courtroom as well as the family courtroom. And here's the reason why. whenever you have a family, an intact family, in and out of court, in and out of court, that family is being antagonized. So it's not only the individual parent, but he is connected or she is connected to a spouse who are both connected to other children. Those
Okay.
are cases that you don't want to have going back and forth in court, because the whole design of the family court is to protect the best interest of the family.
Okay.
So going back to the K Street attorney and that whispering back and
Yes.
forth, all they had to do, let me play it for you, if as though I'm working in the law firm, okay? If I'm the attorney and I'm sitting down with Mr. Janfi and I say, well, Mr. Janfi, what is the relationship between your wife and the child? I'd be like, oh man, she was there very beginning, man. She loves him and we all love each other. We like one big happy family. How do you feel about her adopting the child? I would have immediately said, adopt the child. Why would we want to adopt a child? Because my experience as a law firm, been doing this for over 20, 30 years. If this case continues down the track, it could ruin you financially. It can destroy your whole family between your wife and yourself. Because eventually she's going to get tired and money is going to keep going out. And the more and more she's watching that money leave the household, then she's going to start looking at the child and she's not going to feel as though she used to feel. It's going to cause a strain, could damage your whole family structure. Now, here's what I recommend. I recommend that she comes into my law office, sign the adoption paperwork, and because I'm a K Street law firm and I know the chief judge personally, we're just going to have them sign off on it.
Okay.
Then you would say, well, don't you need a hearing? No, you don't need no hearing. Why? Because a child's best interests overrides your and my constitutional rights. That standard is so strong that if my attorney did a sidebar with the judge who had jurisdiction to sign the adoption, there will be nothing that they can do. End of story. Now, why is this important? This is important because that severs the parental rights of the other parent, so that they no longer have access to the courts. That's the thing, having access to the court. So as long as you have access to the court and the various government instruments, you're going to go back and forth, and that's not healthy for the family, and that's not healthy for the child. So I learned that reading the domestic relations book. So I'm telling my downgraded attorney, that's where I want to go. And oh man, she was like, oh, Kwame, I mean, even my wife was uncomfortable with that. Let me tell you why. I mean, you got to understand, my wife is one of the sweetest women that you would ever meet. I mean, she's so loving and compassionate. She loved this young man and held so much back from herself to support the family. You need to do a story on women who are in those situations, man, because they're the ones holding that whole thing together, and a lot of suffer quietly, emotionally. So initially, my wife was like, I don't want to sign that thing. I don't want to take her parental rights from her. I'm like, no, we're just trying to get out of the courtroom and stop this financial bleeding. And she's like, I'm terribly, I had to just push and push. So reluctantly, she finally signed it. And then I gave it to the attorney to push it through.
Okay.
The attorney would not sign off on that one. I'm talking about the downgraded attorney.
Yeah.
The downgraded attorney, she doesn't have those connections into the courtroom like my K Street attorney. So she's all nervous and everything about presenting cases in the court in front of the judges. So I was like, girl, I can't be using you. So I kept her and I just started writing my own stuff. So when the case finally got to the Court of Appeals at the state level, what I was appealing was the family court judge, because I said the family court judge, they ain't do nothing. They did not do a ruling in our or the child's best interest. So I went to the Court of Appeals, filed an appeal, and man, the Court of Appeals sat on it. I don't know how long it was, but by that time I knew how to file a writ. And the next court above the Court of Appeals for the state was the Supreme Court.
Okay.
So I filed a case in the Supreme Court, another writ, and there was this rule in the Supreme Court, the fine print, that says, hey, you got to go back to court and verify something. I'm like, okay, so these are the rules of the Supreme Court.
Okay.
And you got to go back to the court and verify a constitutional question. I go back to the court, start collecting all the docket sheets, and I'm like, whoa, wait. I called my wife. I said, babe, I'm looking at this docket sheet, and I said, weren't we in court like in March or something like that? She said, yeah. I said, well, why is the date September? This is weird.
Oh,
so,
Mom.
In the movie, you see me going through all my documents. And lo and behold, see, by this time, I know what a court order looks like. I know what a motion looks like. These complex legal documents, I know what they look like now. Before then, I didn't know.
Because you wasn't, this ain't right. This isn't what you do every day.
Exactly. Right. So I start pulling out old documents from the early case, and lo and behold, when I look at the domestic relations manual from the court, and then I compared the documents to the manual, I was like, oh my God, these are all counterfeit. These are fake documents. And I'm like,
what?
Oh,
wait.
Oh, wait. Hold on, Michelle. I gotta tell you this part. I prayed for understanding. I prayed that God would open my eyes. Like, man, I'm scratching my head. Like, what is going on? When that light bulb went off and I looked at those documents, I wasn't upset. I wasn't angry. I said, man, God had opened it up so I can actually see what the hell is going on.
Okay.
Now you can ask the question.
Okay. Oh, my goodness. Okay. This is the part that I think shocked me like no other, is the fact that the server, the process server, the folks in family, what was it? Child support court.
Yes.
All this is fake. All this is fake.
All of it.
Help me. Like, you go into a courtroom thinking there's a judge up there, we got this and that. This is all fake. Like, how does that happen? How do you have fake processors, judges, orders? Okay, so please explain this, because this is what literally blew me away. Because as you said, you're ignorant only because you're not aware of this.
Correct.
Being a fake document. We don't get court orders every day. We're good law-abiding citizens. So no, I wouldn't know if I got something that said government, state, whatever, you got to show up to court, whatever. You're not thinking this is fraudulent.
Correct.
But yet, that's what you found out. So tell us, how does that happen?
Well, let me tell you, I had a competitive edge over most people.
Yeah, because you're an IT guy.
I'm an IT guy, and I'm working in the federal government. And I just happen to be working at an agency where I had a conversation with an attorney from that federal agency. And I'm talking to him about a document. You got to understand, child support is a federal program. That's the first thing you need to understand. And any document that's coming from the federal agency, whether it is coming from the federal agency as in Health and Human Services, because Health and Human Services is the one that regulates child support. Then you have at the state level employees, Title IV employees who are running the program using federal forms and information, because you talk about garnishment of your wages across various state lines. So when people put these documents in the mail that go to your employer, what the employer is looking at is a wage withholding form that's regulated by the Health and Human Services Office. Well, all federal documents fall under this federal law called the Paperwork Reduction Act. So anytime you are filing taxes, for example, you look on the right-hand corner of the form and you should see what's called an O&B number. Now, what I'm sharing with you is what the lawyer from the federal agency was sharing with me. I mean, it's just a side conversation. It's not like I'm going to him and, oh, woe is me, this thing. We're just talking. Lo and behold, I didn't even realize that there's a public portal from an agency at the White House. We were managing the server at our agency, but the agency that owns the system is the Office of Information and Regulatory Affairs. It's at the White House. You can go online and verify any federal documents to verify whether it is an authentic document or not. And by law, you do not have to give up your information on that form. And I'll give you an example. It's big now, but back then, not too many people know about it. But if you go to identitytheft.gov, you will see off of the main page a note that tells you exactly what I just told you. So the federal forms that they were using in my case, they were all counterfeit, bogus documents. And not just that. The state office that regulates child support is the Office of the Attorney General at the state level. So anytime somebody receives something from the Attorney General's office from the state, your heart is going to drop. I'm telling you that. Right? It's very intimidating. So there's a correlationship between the Attorney General's office at the state and the Office of Child Support Enforcement. That marriage between these two entities, in my opinion, is devastating to you and I in the general public. Because if you get someone that in that law enforcement Attorney General office that's handling your financial and personal information and they running a scam, it's going to be very difficult to fight that, because you're fighting what we call bad apples or state actors. And there's a whole legal framework that deals with that. It's called Section 1983 litigation. There are attorneys that specialize in this. So what you might be like, oh my God, you're shocked that, you found out that the form was a fake document. No. Let me tell you a secret, Michelle. Federal regulators already know that. This is a big problem in the child support industry. And as a matter of fact, if you go to the website, Health and Human Services at the federal level, there is a division called BOA, Board of Appeals. And it's not just child support, but there's so many creative schemes at the state level that's constantly being played when it comes to federal agencies. That is the purpose of the federal agency as regulators. So let me just, because we're talking about the child support program, let me just focus on that.
Okay.
With the child support program, the federal regulators, what they do is they go into a state and they got to look at the books. When they go in and look at the books for every case that they have, what we would call a collections case, they have to have a corresponding order from the court, and your books should be balanced. Okay, so the more collections case you have, you should have a matching order from a magistrate court. And you got to understand, I want to go into detail with this, but they're not real judges. They're like a referee or like a magistrate, completely different from family court. But oftentimes, that's why the Attorney General office and the Office of Child Support Enforcement, that's why those two mixed together is so dangerous, because not only is it intimidating, because if you remember when I went into the child support court, man, they talked to me like I was just nothing. Like,
yeah,
what kind of place is this?
right.
I didn't belong there. I never belonged there. It should have been handled by a family court because we were an intact family. Now, when regulators look at these books and they're not balanced, what ends up happening is that the regulator comes down and begin to take money from that state, and they are penalized. If the state is saying, hey, this is not fair, hey, we want to fight this, then they go to the administrative courts at the federal agency and plead their case. These are open book cases. Anybody can go and read those cases. You see the state losing TANF money. I never liked the fact that it's TANF money, temporary assistance to needy family. So in other words, your Title 4D person is running their books all off whack, but it's the temporary assistance of needy family fund that
get penalized.
Exactly. So this is a real issue.
Yeah.
You just don't hear about it in the news reports. So what I'm sharing with you is that this is a common issue. It's what makes this one unique was that it was thoroughly documented on paper, in court, and in the movie. So the movie captured that. And I just happened, fortunately, to have the financial resources, the educational background, the access to the federal agencies, and being able to package and put these things together, and at least have a mental picture of understanding. And that makes a difference with respect to your mental health. Because when you go into court, you just keep losing and you don't understand why you're losing. But one thing I wanted to say real quick as to this problem that the federal agencies are having. The reason why you have a collections case and you have a court order that supports that, if you didn't have regulators checking those books, any woman anywhere can say, that's my daddy, that's my baby daddy, that's my baby daddy. And all they need is your social security number. Once they get access to your social security number, you may never even don't even know them. Don't even know them.
Right.
But your social security was hacked in a data breach. They identified you as the father. You take it to a child support enforcement officer who works off the books. Next thing you know, you're getting a slip from your employer. They calling you, hey, Bobby Jones, look, I'm just letting you know in your next check, is going to be so-and-so, and this is coming out. And they like, but I'm not the father. I don't even know who you talking about. Well, I'm looking at the order right here. And what the order says, well, I think you need to go to court and figure this thing out. But as far as I'm concerned, we taking this money out because we do not want to be fighting the Attorney General's office.
Right. And that document that the payroll administration is getting to garnish your wages is false. Exactly.
But do they know?
No, because they're not experts in this space either. They're getting a letter. It looks official. Okay, we garnishing. No questions asked, right?
Exactly. Wow. And even if they are aware, your employer, even if they are aware,
they're not getting in the middle of this.
Thank you.
They're not.
Thank you. And
I'm
that's
following order.
That's why Child Support Enforcement Office married to the Attorney General's office. It is, that's dangerous, man. That is really dangerous. So now that we talked about the federal fact that the documents are not authentic, this takes on a whole nother type of case. See, it's not about family court anymore.
No.
We've moved away from family court. This becomes a case, what we call a Section 1983. That's what it's called. It's an old civil rights law called the Ku Klux Klan Act. It's been codified to be called today 1983, Section 1983 litigation. Civil rights attorneys, you talk to any civil rights attorney, he's going to know what you're talking about. And it's called under the color of law. So bad apples that works in the government at the state level, the bad apples, we're not talking about regular employees that go to work like you and me. I'm talking about the bad apples that work there. They use the resources of government. They use the letterhead. They use the computer systems to run an undercover scheme. That falls under civil rights litigation. Now, what's unfortunate is that African Americans in our struggle has put that into the books. This law applies to everybody in this country. It's not an African American designated law.
Right.
And because of that, we all, as American citizens, we all benefit from that legislation that goes back to the old Ku Klux Klan Act of 1872, 1873. And basically what was happening at that time, the old Southerners was using the courts. They were in bed with the sheriff. They would take your property. And I mean, the whole government, state government just turned against you and regulated you into financially destitute.
Oh, man.
That's where the law comes from. So fast forward to today, it's the same scheme, using government institutions to target unsuspecting citizens. You see, my case was never going to be overturned. I could have got the lawyer from the White House. It was a case that was off the books, and everybody's in on it except you. But had I not read the law and had that pause where I can read and digest it, I probably would have never known either. So now, in terms of going back to what you were saying, in terms of the various courts, we've gone from child support court to family court to court of appeals. Luckily for me, when I found that fake document, it created what's called a federal question. And there's a statute in federal law that allows you to take your case out of the state court and into the hands of the federal court. So the case left the District of Columbia, and the case ended up here in Maryland in front of Judge Pete, the notorious Judge Peter Massetti. Federal District Judge Peter Massetti. And I laid it out. Everything I just explained to you, I put in that document. Now, by this time, the lawyers are no longer around. Somehow, the chief judge in the state court of the District of Columbia, I think his name is Chief Judge Washington at that time, he excused the lawyers. He excused the 3-judge panel in the Court of Appeals. By that time, I had found out that the documents were fake. And when he released the lawyers and suspended the 3-judge panel and said that he's going to have exclusive jurisdiction, that opened up the door to Peter Massetti to handle because now my constitutional rights have been violated. And in a nutshell, you know, I laid it out for Peter Massetti, Judge Peter Massetti. All he did was close the case. That was it. That's all he did. This case was closed. That's it.
All that, you got all the way up to federal court, and he just said case closed. But
That
didn't
was
it
it.
like take him a while to get to that point to just close the case? It wasn't
Well,
instantly, was it?
well, his when you compare it to the state and what was going on, I would say it was a lot
Okay.
quicker. You
Okay.
know, it was only a one pager. I think in the movie, I do a screenshot of the
Yeah.
order. He didn't write nothing about the child's best interest.
Whoa.
Um, he didn't give me back my attorney fees. He did not sign or enforce the adoption decree. You know, I think between you and me, Michelle, if this was a case where we were talking on a national stage, let's just say I'm sitting on Oprah's couch or something, this
You
big
you kind of
media
there, but you kind of there
platform.
now.
No,
No.
we close. We close. Um, man, I
Yeah, the lid would be, I mean,
judge.
people would be, that's why this is so mind-blowing, because everything and all this is being done under the radar, and it's happening
Right.
every single day to regular folks like you, me, and the next guy. I mean, this can happen tomorrow to somebody, and it'll take them a while to chase this all down. All the while, money is being taken out of their accounts, their payroll, and just havoc is being wreaked on, and they're fighting this court, going here, cases sitting around, getting no action, no traction. And so he closes the case after
Mhm.
all of that. It's like, so did you even like care? Did you didn't even take into account anything that you said in terms of, wanting the best interest looked at for your son, maybe perhaps even reducing some of that payment. So how old is your son at this point in time?
Well,
Roughly.
he's in the Navy. He's 25 years old. He just called me or texted me today, Dad, I'm in Japan.
Oh,
So we texting back and forth and all of that kind of today,
okay.
but
But when you
very
were at
healthy.
Massetti, how old was he when you were before Massetti?
He was probably like 11 or 12 or something
So
like
you
that.
you've been paying all this time,
Oh
during
no,
the wage.
no. When I
Okay,
found out, when I found out that this thing was a scam, I did not volunteer any more information. That was the
okay,
end of it. Because
okay.
even when Judge Massetti closed the case, that don't mean that the bad apples are stopping. You got to remember, all
Right.
they is your social security number, and that's all they need because they could find out where you're working. And so anytime you run in the case off the books, they don't care nothing about no judge's order or anything like that.
Yeah.
Oh no. That's the danger in offline processes. And if you bring together child support enforcement and the attorney general's office and they are running a case off the books, there's
There's nothing you
practically
can do.
there's nothing you can do. And the only way I was able to get out of this, I think that's where you was going with your question. The only way I was to get out of this was I'm sitting in the car. I got another wage withholding order after all, even after Massetti. And my son gets in the car. This son gets in the car and he finds the wage withholding order. I haven't had one in like 3 years. And he's, Dad, what's this? And I tell him, and he immediately gets on the phone, calls his mom, and said, Dad got one of these. You need to shut this down. And I'm looking at him like, boy, I done spent all this money in court. I done gone through all these lawyers, this, that, and the other. You mean to tell me you get on the phone, call your mama, tell her to shut it down. Next thing I know, I get a phone call from her, and we are meeting at the Office of Child Support Enforcement, and they give me all my paperwork back. They don't give me the money back. They only give me one check because of the most recent check when my son saw it and called them. By that time, I done dropped, I think, 80,000 in bogus child support payments. I think it was like 60,000 in attorney fees. By the time I finished, I was like somewhere 140, $150,000 cash. Because I was good to attorneys. I paid my attorney fees, man. I owe nobody nothing. I paid my child support too. But I was hemorrhaging financially. And my son, pick up that phone, call his mom, and say, shut it down. And by this time, he's 17 years old, and that's what ended the whole situation. The lady at the child support office, she looked at his mother. She said, "Are you sure?" She said, "Yes, I'm sure." And she said, "Once I do this, you can't come back." She says, "Yes, I'm sure." So she go back,
Wow.
do the paperwork. That's the end of my social security number out of their hands. And that's what ended it. No compensation, no I'm sorry, no nothing. And you know what? I didn't care. I'm just
You
happy.
just want it to be over with.
There you go. There you go.
That
So
was
I sat on this for 10 years, this movie, and just now releasing it. It's been 10 years ago. The incident, no, maybe 8 years ago, because my son was still in high school. He's a grown ass man now. So now when I felt like he was man enough and out there on his own, that I come out now and talk about it. And I ask his permission. And I asked my wife, were they okay with me coming out here telling the story? But there
right
is a 8-year buffer between the end of that experience
before you
and where
said,
we are now.
yeah.
Exactly.
Wow. Uh, that right there, I remember the time when it was suggested that I, have you on the show over a year ago. And like you told me, oh, that's great. Watch the movie first. Before we talked about anything, you said just watch the movie. I said, all right. I'm telling y'all, after I finished watching this movie, I had 1,001 questions. I called you up, talked for hours.
Yeah.
I watched it again, and I came back. I still had questions. Like, whoa, wait a minute. Did I? Because I'm tripped out. Because I was so trusting, I guess, of the system, and so just naive to some extent. My own. I don't go through this. I've never gone through child support court and all that, so I don't know anything about it. But I just think about so many people today who might be going through this. I mean, so your situation ended, but the situation didn't end. The problem is still there. And so we sit here. And so I asked you when we talked most recently, I said, so now what? Right? Because, yeah, your son is older. You've gotten through this. You can laugh now at certain things and parts of this, but going through it, it was very painful.
Yeah.
But in the same breath, it's like it had to happen to somebody like you, somebody with that kind of courageous spirit where I'm going to take this as high as I can take it. You didn't talk about it here on this show, but in the movie, you talk about a software program you created where you
Right.
can identify where this fraud can take place. And you
Yeah.
showed this to the FBI.
Correct.
And they asked you, so what do we do next? What do we do? It's like you're the only one. You're an IT expert. You are the only one that could even written a program like this. You know what I mean? It's like because it happened to you, you also were blessed with the skills and the background to be able to do this. And then you actually present. I think you went to some science and technology forum
Right.
sanctioned
The
by
White House.
President
Obama.
Obama. You
Yeah.
you went before them and you told them about this, what is it called?
iSonar.
iSonar
Right.
program. Sorry about that. But again, it had to be somebody like you with the knowledge, with the personal emotional background on this to even see something like that through. So I asked you that question, like, what's next? Because I still feel like although your problem's solved, the problem isn't solved. And
Correct.
until someone like yourself does something, it will probably never get solved. I don't know if it will ever, but at least if nothing else, the awareness for people. like you said, you can go to this database and find out the legitimacy and verify if your documents are right.
Right.
You know, you've been through this, so maybe you're even a consultant to people that are going through this and trying to figure out, well, how do I get out of this? Help me. And this may be your calling. This might be a thing that you're supposed to get after. So I don't want you to end here. I would hope that you could tell us like what's next for you in this space. You said I pulled you out. I pulled you out. I said, you know, you was like, I'm about to go play basketball. I'm like, I'm pulling you back in, brother. Like, what are you gonna do? I mean, we got something here that needs to be fixed, and you're a do the right kind of, you know, thing person. So I'll just. You may not have all the answers, but at least you know what are your thoughts on what's next?
Well, you know what you're talking about is accountability, responsibility. You're 100% correct. You know, do I want to? Not really, but do I feel compelled as and responsible? Oh, absolutely. Um, but yeah, it's there. I do have an idea as the approach to this, and I think you and I we talked offline about it. The commissioner, Miss Tangela Gray, uh, she's a woman from out of Atlanta. She's over the whole child support system at the federal level. It's a big problem, and you got to empower families who are going through this and give them the knowledge and the tools. I don't think it should be an antagonistic
Right,
relationship between Gray,
right,
but I, I'm committed to do my part, and if I
okay,
had to do it, it would be more shows like this. I think it should be a show with the civil rights attorney. I think I can write a administrative claim to inform Miss Gray of the devastation, the technology component at HHS and how it's being exploited. The only problem though with that is that Michelle and most people are watching this. We are hardworking, you know, 9 to 5 kind of people. But you got to remember the bad apples that run this kind of scam. This is their livelihood. So
yeah,
don't think for one moment that hey, we figured it out. We're gonna kick in the doors, get rid of the bad apples, and life is gonna be good. That it doesn't work like that. As an individual, it cost me 80,000 in bogus child support payments. That's one case.
just one
You
case.
multiply that by thousands who are in the system, and you take just 10% and say 10% of these cases are cases that's run off the books. And
Yeah,
then you have the marriage between enforcement and the attorney general, which means that you have very powerful people with access to
yeah,
powerful government instruments. In other words, they can target you and make
yeah,
you look like some sort of criminal because
yeah,
they have direct access to those instruments. So it's not as simple as you might think in terms of dealing at the government level, but I do believe you got to empower the families that's caught in the middle of it. And if you allow me to say this part, I think it's worse now than when I started, and I'm gonna tell you why. It's in plain view. It's in plain sight. You can watch the YouTube channels. You can see it. So, in other words, we have a generation that are okay with cases on YouTube regarding custody, involving child support, families going back and forth, baby mama drama here, baby daddy drama here, and it has
yeah.
become entertainment for us. That's a very dangerous precedent. And I got one more thing to say about this. I was
Mhm.
watching one of those shows on YouTube the other day. The woman said, "We are married. We're not yet divorced," but it was a child support hearing. I couldn't even watch the whole thing because I said to myself, the magistrate doesn't have any jurisdiction over that matter at all. The Office of the Attorney General, what they're supposed to do is excuse themselves and say, well, ma'am, you're not even divorced, you're still married. Then what you need to do is go work out your situation with your marriage. If you're going to do a divorce, then get a divorce, and the family court judge can resolve issues of custody, issues of property, and issues of child support. A child support hearing is not a place for an intact family. They don't have the background, they don't have the skill sets, and they don't have that sensitivity. Everything is about money. And what ends up happening, you can rip families apart. So whenever you hear about murder, suicide cases, I haven't drawn the correlation yet. But in some of these instances, these are people trapped in those situations, man. And it's like a powder keg. So I cover some of that in the movie where people can't handle it, man, and they end up destroying each other.
Oh my gosh. Well, I know we're over time here, and we do have a couple of comments on here and statement. It said, good evening, family. This is from one of my cousins, bless you all. And she says, go ahead, my brother, and do that. Amen. Okay. So she's pushing you, go forward with what your thoughts and plans are to try to help in this space. And then she also states that there's an organization called the Friends of the Fathers. I'm not familiar with it. Maybe it's something to look into. Friends of the Fathers. They may be onto this already. I'm not sure. But to me, this here has opened my eyes to even like just data breaches, security breaches, like with your, you talk about the new hire databases and how, when you get a new job, I think you fill out a 9 or
I think it's a W-4.
W-4. And on the W-4, you put in your social security. And if there's a leak there, boom, there's your information right there. Where you work, social security number. So that's what I'm saying. This can happen. I mean, we're talking about child support right now, but this could be a bigger issue down the line for other things too. It doesn't necessarily stop here. But I do like the fact that you can go somewhere to see the validity of your documentation. When you get something that requires you to do something, we get scared, especially if you're a law-abiding citizen and you get something that make you looks like you're doing something wrong. We just want to go and clear it up. We'll do whatever. Well, take a minute, take a breath, see if it's even valid. Like, never thought to even do that first, because that could have saved a lot of this up front. But you had no idea. You were like me and everybody else probably watching. It's like, yeah, it's legit. I got to go handle this. I got to boom, 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 right? But then it wasn't until you spending lots of time and money to realize, oh, I'm being scammed. Hold on, back up. How did this happen? Blah, 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 blah. So I say all that to say is this is an eye opener. I purposely wanted to have this show to open eyes, make people aware. People are going through cases right now. You may want to just step back. Let me just check. Is this even a real order, that I'm dealing with? Because you might be running circles. I've heard people say, I'm paying a whole lot of money here, or that was an unfair ruling, and this, that, and the third. And then they may come find out that ain't even a real case. It's not even a real order. You know what I'm saying? So, like,
that's right.
Wow, right? That's crazy. Well, let's see. Yeah, she was saying it's time for families to come together. Fathers have to fight for the rights of their children. Yes, all that. I agree. And I think that, Kwame, you've done a fantastic job kind of laying this all out. And there's not a whole lot of questions here, and it's probably on purpose because their mouths are dropped. Their jaws are dropped right now. I can imagine the audience that is watching this right now. They're just, I cannot believe this, but that's okay, because you guys can come back. This is going to be it's recorded. You can watch the replay. You can share this with other people. It's definitely I think it's open public on YouTube and on our SMAC page. Make sure you go there. I just want to thank you, Kwame, for being on the show. We finally got here. It took us a while to get here, but I'm glad we're here. I appreciate you, brother. I applaud all that you went through, and I think there's a purpose behind all that you just went through. The fight is not over, and the battle can be won in some way, shape, or form. And I think you are the catalyst to make that happen. So I thank you so much for being on the show. I thank the SMAC Nation out there for staying on. As always, a little overtime. I try to keep it an hour, but when you get into these things, it just never is quite enough time. So again, for those who are joining in after the fact, make sure you tell your family and friends to join SMAC Productions on Facebook, subscribe to it on YouTube, and be sure to watch the movie inthebestinterest.com. You can find that on YouTube or on Rumble. And I think you might be even looking at TikTok as a place that you may be having.
Yeah, absolutely.
Maybe Oprah one day, but maybe I'll be Oprah one day, and then we'll do this all over again, because you can never share enough good information over and over again. This is very helpful for, I believe, somebody out there who's watching. And so with that, I'm going to close our show here, and just everyone stay blessed. And before I go, Kwame, do you have anything you want to say? I'm just talking away. I don't want to close this out. If you got any last words or anything that you want to share with the audience.
Well, only thing, Michelle, it's not so much the audience as it is you. You have pushed this issue, and I pray and hope that this inspires other podcasters to share this platform, this movie, this story. There are a lot of families that's going through this, and the children are the one that's suffering. And if I can be of assistance, if I can be a platform to help bring these families together, or dissolve equitably, without total destruction, I welcome that opportunity, and I thank you for sharing your platform with me.
My pleasure. My pleasure. Thank you so much again. And with that, everyone, I'm going to say be blessed and have a great night.
Thank you. Good night.
Thank you.